can you remember a time when you yourself didn't really feel seen, and how did you overcome that?
Talking about the culture, what is Stacia culture to you?
Do you think that maybe they should have stuck with, because now you're going through a different system, do you think they should have stuck with the older system where it was the structure of how it is in Holland, or you think maybe switching to the English system was the best choice?
People might say, I shouldn't have to stay in his realm. Like I should say, like, okay, your age. What's your idea on that?
Well,
what's going on, everybody? Back again with another episode of A Talk. Today, before I start every episode, I usually ask everybody to subscribe to the channel. But also, I wanted to thank everyone because this is just a passion project that turned into something that bigger than we even expected. However, at the same time, too, we would like to enhance the studio, whether it's with cameras, whether it's with the look around, because sometimes people see, compared to the first episode, so now you see constant improvement. You could help us with this improvement by beautifying your house. You're like, how can I do that? Well, I have a store. It has canvases, it has prints, it has cards, it has everything you can find in there. They're going to be in the first link you can see below in the description box, so check that out. But I just wanted to drop that for you guys, so you guys can support. If you want to know a way to support the podcast, that's the perfect way to do so while beautifying your home. Today we have with us a very special guest. He's a lot of things. He's a chef. He's I would say slightly a politician. He is
Event planner.
He is future governor.
Yeah.
A lot of things. You could go on and on and on. Our Stacia Youth Empowerment.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. I think by now you might have guessed who it is. We're sitting down with Master Ishn Courtar.
Courtar.
Right. So no, going forward, how to say it? If you can describe yourself in a few words, how would you do that? Sentences.
If possible.
If it's possible.
Okay, that's a deep one. I think I would say outgoing, loud, and extra, but also passionate and humble.
Yeah.
5 good words?
Why the name Master? Where did it come from?
I ask myself the question constantly as well, because I really don't know where it came from. But I do remember the first person I heard with it was Megady.
Oh.
And it just stuck.
Yeah.
So since then, I've used Master.
And you never inquired?
No, actually. I think that's something I should do. I remember it was around Stacia Day, and we were doing a song about Stacia. And we had to do like show names or artist names, and he did MJ. That was Mayor Jenna. And I think he also did Master. So that's kind of where it comes from.
How does it feel being called that when he gave you that name, that title?
At the time, I didn't like it. I felt like a slave master. And it continued to just grow because, people then start to say it. And then I named myself on Facebook.
Yeah.
Master.
Yeah.
I actually did that because I didn't want to put my last name. Because a lot of people say quarter, like a 25 cent.
Yeah.
I'm a Courtar.
You're more than that.
I went and I was like, and then somebody was like, you got your name on Facebook. What's your last name? And then I was like, let me add the last name.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to add those, sometimes when you look up something on Google, it'll have the hackers, and it got exactly how you're supposed to say it.
How you supposed? Yes.
Yeah,
I think I should do that for my first name instead of my last name. The first one more difficult to pronounce.
How do they say it?
People say Ishn.
Oh.
People say Ishan. I've heard persons say it like, so it's ocean but with an I. So I just tell people, it's ocean but with an I.
Okay.
Okay.
That's an easy way of explaining it too.
Yeah.
Seeing that you actually spoke about Stacia Day, I know that especially it was last year or the year before, you really get heavily involved in the promotion and stuff. How you even get into doing that?
Well, I consider myself to be passionate about Stacia, and I take pride in knowing that Stacia celebrations about our culture and its people is done within a certain aspect. Stacia Day has matured a lot compared to when I was small. You know, it was just the matching and that's it, the little shows here and there, and now it's growing. So I wanted to be a part of that growth. I think I became very involved when I started to see things going south with certain things like promotion for sure. So, I would just go to the cultural department and be like, y'all gotta get on this promotion, y'all gotta get on it, y'all gotta get it out there. And then I was seeing some stuff internationally, the little signs.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's something good to try, the signs. Yeah. I looked around the region, I noticed persons do national colors. I was like, boy, I ain't seen that work in Stacia.
Yeah.
But then after Mercedes mentioned that it would have been the 20th anniversary of the flag, I was like, yeah, we definitely have to do this, to celebrate, because it's not only about the flag itself, but what does the colors and the shapes within the flag mean to us. So I tried to become more involved as much as possible.
How did you feel? That's when you really sit down and you see kind of an influence in how people actually wear the colors specifically. And how did you feel getting so much support in people actually doing what you're putting out there?
Well, at first, I was kind of nervous because I didn't have all the colors to wear myself. I was very nervous. I was like, boy, look how you put the thing out there and then you don't got the colors yourself. But I actually felt proud, and not proud of myself, but proud of the people, because I know that I am not always the easiest person to deal with, and to see so many persons doing something, not what I said, but what would be culturally right, and what would show our island that really and truly we have national pride. I was actually feeling very good. I felt very, very good.
What is your vision overall with Stacia? Because you said back then it wasn't really, how it is now, because you see the progress. What is your vision of how it should be?
If I had to envision Stacia Day, I think I would keep definitely what we have now, the aspect of the cultural, the cultural aspect of it. But in terms of changes, I think I would change the morning program a lot. I know from experience, standing in the brigade, the program is long. I mean, last year I think it was longer than usual. It went till 9 o'clock, from 6 to 9.
Standing.
I wasn't standing, I was sleeping. But from 6 to 9, it was very, very long. So I think that's something I would change, make it more culturally inclined, because there are way too many speeches, dances every year.
Yeah.
Condense the ceremony, and if you're going to do dance, you keep it through the week, because that's what the week is for, to celebrate your culture and so forth, so forth.
Talking about the culture, what is Stacia culture to you?
A melting pot of 193 nationalities.
Describe it.
It's like a little bit of every culture molded into one big pot. It's like Johnny cakes are not Stacian, but we do Johnny cakes. But we don't just do Johnny cakes. We do Johnny cake with anything. I realize that here Johnny cake comes with everything. It comes with soup. It comes with relish. It comes even with salad these days. I see persons just stuffing it with salad and sauce. And I'm like, wow, okay. So, I think that our culture is more not about what started here, but what brought people here.
Okay.
So it's our humility. It's also our unity. And that's something you don't really get in other countries, A lot of countries pride themselves in calling themselves different names. Like, perfect example, the Friendly Island. And then when you're really there, you're like, because you're all alone. But in Stacia, it's a community.
Yeah.
So it takes one to reach one, and it takes a village to raise a child. But in this case, it takes a village to be the people of Stacia.
Yeah. You say, you're speaking about the Johnny cakes. You bring me back to, what is the national dish of Stacia?
Okay. The national dish of Stacia
If you know.
actually is goat meat with peas and rice, green salad, and plantain.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's official.
That is official.
Okay, because I know it had a time, people were asking around, but what is the national dish of, because I think it had a process where culture was lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's why now there's a lot of initiatives to bring it back to life, or discovering, okay, what is actually our identity and the culture? What is our identity?
What is our identity? That's a very strong question. And I think that for many of us, including the government, we have not reached an answer to that question. I think we are getting closer to it, because they're starting to do things like the ancestral remains they're dealing with. They're dealing with the future of Stacia. They're dealing with the present of Stacia. And I think the biggest question has been and remains, what is our identity? How do we identify to the rest of the world? And I think that is difficult finding an answer, because we have so many different nationalities. You don't want to say we are this, and then when you really look at the depth of what you call yourself, it's not us. It's a different nationality you're just adopting. Yeah. So I think that something that should be done is, more self-search,
Yeah.
Because our identity has to do with oneself, not with 6 people at one time. It has to do with oneself, and based on the response from oneself, then you can really look at, does this really match the culture in which I grew up or I live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you already mentioned some aspects of it, what the Stacia people are. And it's all about figuring that out. You had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, seeing that you're talking about finding oneself as a youth, it's something that as you grow, become a teenager, that's one thing you try your best to find. Some people don't ever find themselves, but I see that you start something. You started last year, if I'm not mistaken, Stacia Youth Empowerment.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. Where did the initiative actually come from?
What's the
what make you
official
want
name
to
of
do
it?
that? Yeah.
Yes. So Stacian Youth Empowerment is an organization that is geared toward young people. Under this organization, we host the Remarkable Teen Awards.
Yes, remarkable.
And it began Stacia Day. I was at Stacia Day, and a lady came to me, and she was like, she was not from here, and she came to me, she was like, "You were amazing on stage." She said, "You ever received an award?" I said, "An award for what?"
Oh.
And she was like, "In other countries, there are programs," and she started to give me information. And then I was like, let me leave this lady, because I think she don't know what she's talking about. And as I went up the road and I came back down, she came to me again. She was like, this is the information. She gave me a paper. Start
Lovely.
to do research. Start to look at this. Start to look
Nice.
at that. Establish a program. You need more young people who are outgoing, outspoken.
Especially you.
Yeah, and these programs are geared toward building and fostering such initiatives,
Yeah.
being outspoken. It's geared towards, being a role model for others, being a leader for not only others, but for the nation at large, It's about growing mentally, physically, and, it has been a journey, but I really, really owe all the credit to that lady who directed me towards this. And Stacia Youth Empowerment, this is our 3rd annual Remarkable Teen Awards. And we have 20 youngsters who have been awarded already Remarkable Teens. And we are having 10 again this coming May. And I'm really just proud to see how all of those youngsters have not only lived up to the expectation, but they have gone above and beyond. And, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
When I watch Marshall, I watch D in the States.
Yep.
I'm like, wow. I watch Catherine, who's doing fabulous and wonderful with these nails and so forth. I'm like, wow,
Nice.
And I see some of our youngsters who have returned for vacations and I spoke with them. It's just impeccable. You just stand at all like, wow.
Yeah, nice.
You know?
What's the goal with the Stacia Youth Empowerment? What was the ultimate goal you have for it exactly?
Well, actually, my goal for the awards is that I want young people to feel seen. I want young people to not only feel seen, but I want them to feel heard. And oftentimes, young people are looked over. And I notice within our community, we have this mindset this mentality that, hey, you're just a kid. Or you young, what you could do.
Of this generation.
Yeah, so I really want young people to see that even though there are 10 people in one room telling you you can't, there is one person in a corner saying, yes, you can.
Yeah.
I want them to feel that warmth. Even if it's just a small number, I want them to feel like, hey, I'm going to make it.
You're seen.
I'm seen, I'm heard. And my goals are not dependent on my situation, but the way in which I react to the situation. Getting an award is just the beginning.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, the award, I see the award as a stone.
Yeah. But also it's like you catching them being good. So it's like, okay, sometimes like you say, negativity and all of that, at least you can say, hey, I see your efforts. And that is, I think you achieve your goal by doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Recently we did interviews for the next set of remarkable teams.
Yeah.
How does the selection go?
So the selection is done based on our guideline, which outlines that we must publish the link for nomination, or you can fill out an actual form. And that goes out every December before the award is held.
Yeah.
And the nominations are actually open from August to January. Yes, August to January. But the printed version is from August to January, and we do the online from December to February.
Okay.
So you nominate someone, and then when we go through the nominations, we really check the biographies. That is why it's important to write a biography. In Stacia, we have a kind of bad habit. We don't like to write about people. We prefer to come in, sit down, and tell you a whole story, and then you have nothing on people.
Yeah.
So that is something we struggle with. But after we get the biographies, we go through them as a committee. After going through them, we then narrow it down to 20 kids. So 20 kids, and then we do interviews with them.
Teenagers.
Teenagers, yes. And based on the interview, we then do some score rubrics, and then we make a decision together.
Okay. And how is the support with that?
The support. Actually, this year, the past awardees were very instrumental in getting the present awardees. So I included not only the past awardees, but on the committee, there are persons from different aspects. So there is a youth worker, there is just a member who is in the community, there is an older head. So there are a mixed number of people on the committee, and the support from the community has helped a lot in that, because I realized that on a lot of committees within our community, because we are small and we're all family, it kind of biased sometimes. And I was trying not to be biased. I wanted it as much as possible to be fair. So that young people could feel that, hey, I am empowered. So the community support has been, it really and truly, the support with this election, I would say it has been challenging getting support with the selection. But once they are selected, the community support is like, boom. It's like a light switch.
Oh, it's once they are selected.
Yes, it's
like
a
process.
The process. I think the writing kind of turned people off.
And I see, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I see that they extended it, the age gap, to, I think, to 30?
To 30, yeah.
Oh, to 30.
Why, how come you end up doing that?
So, because I realized that the criteria doesn't only apply to young people between 12 and 19. It applies to young people too who actually have already got in there in a sense. The award for Remarkable Teen is for young people who are becoming. But then we also have Extraordinary Teen Award. Well, now the name has changed to Extraordinary Youth Award, which is geared towards the older more mature young people who have already completed their studies. You know, maybe persons like, for perfect example, Linadia.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was on this program.
Yeah.
Yes.
Heard how many businesses she runs.
Yeah.
Heard her achievements. And persons like Linadia has made me thought about it.
Yeah.
And then the committee also thought about it. And we were like, this is a better initiative because youth within our kingdom ends at 29.
Okay.
So I was like, it's a youth. It's about youth, not about teens, only about youth.
Yeah.
Nice initiative.
Yeah, I see you mention also that when you were speaking to us, you say a lot of times the youths don't feel seen or they don't feel heard. Can you remember a time when you yourself didn't really feel seen, and how did you overcome that?
I think everybody knows that I grew up without my father, and I grew up without my mother. And when I was younger, I used to I used to flip off. And I think that was the moment when I wanted to feel heard and seen. And I was heard, I was seen, but I didn't feel that.
Yeah.
So the feeling of being heard and seen, it's a personal thing. You can be heard by thousands of people, seen by thousands of people, but you personally, you're like, am I really heard? Am I really seen? And that was actually one of the moments when I realized that I personally didn't feel seen and heard. So, as a child, you would just act out because you want people to actually see you and hear you, but then you're seeking attention in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
When did it click for you?
When did it click for me? When I decided that I wanted to become somebody great within the community. And that was when I actually was going to the Seventh-day Adventist school. I actually realized that, hey, I don't just want to be here and exist. I want to be here, exist, and do something.
Yeah.
Make a change, make a difference, Do something that would not only leave a footprint, but that would build a legacy to last a long way after. Not for myself, but for others.
So you mentioned that you didn't feel seen when you was young. You weren't raised by your mother or your father. So I wanted to know how did it make you feel growing up?
Well,
not being raised within the regular mother and father.
Well, I grew up in a very close-knit community, in the sense that everywhere I turned, there were people who were there for me. And I personally, as I look back, I would say I actually feel very, very, very good that I didn't grow up with my actual parents. And that's because the love that I have from my nana, I don't think they would have been able to give me that much love. Like, nana would go the extra mile for me. She would leave herself undone and ensure that I am well taken care of, And I think that is something that...
And your nana is who?
My nana is Jennifer Simmons. Tomorrow's her birthday, actually.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So, as I reflect, I really think that growing up, it was a blessing to not grow with my actual parents, because if I were with them, I don't think I would have been this person today.
Yeah. And throughout that process, you might was wondering, like, why you, right?
Yeah, definitely. I could remember in 2013 when my sister left Stacia. I sat on the bed and I cried. And I asked the question why she had to leave me. She was the only thing, that I actually had close to a sibling.
Yeah.
And she then left. So I was all alone. I felt all alone then, I should say. But I think my greatest comfort was, even at that time, I started to pray. And I was saying, God, bring back my sister. Bring her back fast.
Yeah.
You know? So things like that.
So you had a strong connection with your sister.
I really and truly I did. Not knowing her every day, but I knew she was there. You know, we went to school together. We were going Bethel school together. You know, you would have that sibling. You know, you don't. Well, for me, I don't know if you all have any other siblings who are not in who didn't grow in your household. You didn't see them every day. They weren't at your house every day, but you know they were your sibling, and they were there for you, and you were there for them.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
That type of connection.
Exactly. I see your reference that you pray. You see, before you came here, you came from church.
Yes.
What brought that strong connection with church itself?
I was offered up a Seventh-day Adventist, and I was going to the Seventh-day Adventist faithfully every Sabbath, but I didn't really like it. And it was then Nana told me I had to go to a church, any church, but I had to find a church and I had to be there every Saturday or every Sunday.
Yeah.
No question. So I was like, whoa.
So you had an option.
Yeah, I had an option, but not a choice. You know? And I was like, boy, I had to find a church. I was small. And I was like, I going with you.
How old were you then?
Boy,
If you could
very,
remember.
very, very small. This was back in, I would say, 2010. So very, very small.
Yeah.
I think I was, 5, 6? Somewhere there.
I'll let you finish.
Or 4, somewhere there. But I remember when I went to the church the first time at Bethel, I did like it.
Yeah.
I did like it. But then I got to know the older folks. And then things went downhill. Because you know those older folks, stand up and sing. Or you got to stand up now, stand up. When you don't stand up, they're ringing you a pinch. And you watching them like, you serious? You know? And my connection grew from then. Because I had to go to church every Sunday. I was in everything. I was in the boys' brigade.
Yeah.
I was in the Sunday school. And Women's League were Tuesdays. And I had to go Women's League behind Nana, sit down in the back of the church. I was in the children's choir.
Yeah.
If there was a meeting she was going to, I had to go. And I had to sit down in the back. And I had to make sure I be quiet.
Yeah.
So, from then, it continued to grow within me that, hey. And then it became a choice. Yes, I want to go.
You mentioned 2 faith, well, I should say, religion, Adventist and Bethel. Methodist, sorry. But 2 of them are worshiping God. What was the difference between the 2? That you preferred one more than the other?
Well, okay. Saturdays were downstairs, the Adventist church, when I was going there at the time. And it would be long. It would be long, and they would sing the same song. And I would be there like, I'm ready to go home. And then I was with my godmother at the time, and she would be like, sit up straight. You know? And I would be like, boy, this is boring. This is boring. And I didn't really like it because it was Sabbath school. This 2 hours or 3 hours, I can't remember. And then you still had to go to church the Sabbath. And I was like, oh, this is long. This is very long. And then when I went to Bethel, it was like church, home, Sunday school in the afternoon.
Okay.
So, I think the timing for me, as a child, you was wondering why you have to be here so long.
Yeah.
So for me as a child, I think that was
Okay.
me,
I could, like for example, let me say, some people have a different reaction to having to go to church every week. Some children might decide, I could say me myself, if I want to be honest, as soon as I don't have to, I ain't gonna go no more. What make you still decide at the age that maybe you did have a choice whether to go or not, to still decide to want to go church?
I think it's because I didn't only go to church. I learned the church. And by the church, I don't mean the Methodist church. I learned the church through the Bible because I had to read the Bible, And one thing that I've learned is salvation is personal. So even if my family doesn't go, even if my best friend doesn't want to come, it's about me. And I have to answer for myself. So if I don't go, then I harming myself. That's how I see it, you know. And church is not about the hymns or the amount of people that come. Church is about what you take from going, you know, how you become a different person from attending a weekly service. Yeah. That's how I see it for myself.
I also see that you go to St. Kitts.
Yes.
And I mean, based on what I see, it's a lot more, I don't know what I want to say, like uppity. It's more lively than...
Oh, you go to St. Kitts for the service?
Yeah. What's the biggest difference you can say between going to church in St. Kitts and going to church here?
Okay. So here I go to the Methodist Church. In St. Kitts, I go to the Antioch Baptist Church.
What's the name of it?
Antioch Baptist Church.
Okay.
Antioch is very, 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 very different in different aspects, you know. They have some similarities, but in a lot of ways they are different. Like
in what way? Okay.
Bethel is peppy, but in Stacia twang, Antioch jump up. There's a huge difference when it comes to music, you know, and not only the jump up, but the worship is different, you know, because we would sing hymns and we'd have praise and worship, but they would do praise and worship for maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then the sermon, you know, and the sermon for sure is completely different. You feel different compared to the two. When I'm in the Methodist Church, I feel comforted by the word. And when I'm in Antioch, I definitely feel like, hey, something ain't right here with me. You know, it puts you to question yourself.
Yeah.
There are those moments in Stacia where I feel the same way, but mainly when I go to Antioch, that's how I feel.
How did that start?
I was in St. Kitts at Christmas, and I wanted to go to church. And I used to, when I was small, I went there already. And I was like, you know, maybe I should visit again. Yeah. But they had this big building, and I don't know where this big building is, because they moved from the small church to the big church. I was like, boy, let me see. And I sent them a message on Facebook, and then they sent someone to pick me up.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So it was,
Yes, that was 7 o'clock a Sunday morning, a Christmas morning, I think 3 years ago, or 4. And I went to the service, and it was really good. And since then, I kept going whenever I traveled to St. Kitts, and then my trips to St. Kitts stopped, and I started to travel not for fun, but for the church.
Yeah.
Because the church is full of activities.
Yeah.
Like, perfect example, they had their 60th anniversary. I traveled for that. They had their parade on the street. I traveled for that. Their 4th Street Praise. I traveled for that, you know. So it started to become less a trip of leisure, more a trip of spirituality.
Yeah.
So you felt like you was being of service?
Yeah, you know, I felt a difference. Like, for example, in Bethel, I'm constantly on the go. I do the monitors. If the organist ain't there, I play sometimes, you know. The drummer ain't there, I drum. I do the live stream. You know, so it's like,
so you actually
always have something.
Like how you say you study the church.
Yeah. Like, I always have something to do. I have to get up.
Yeah.
But then in Antioch, I don't have nothing to do. I just have to sit and watch or listen.
Okay.
Know? So that's the difference for me.
Have you ever got to anyone to tag along with you from Stacia?
This year, they made 62. And I invited a lot of people. I had, 50 invitations. I gave them out. And in the invitations, I had envelopes for donation. Now, they didn't come, but I made sure I carried the envelopes with the donations.
Yeah.
But to get persons to go, I have not been able to get persons to go. But I do know that when I encourage people here, when they go to St. Kitts, even if it's for a day, they would literally go and look for the church building, take a picture, and send it to you. I'm in front of your church.
That's Ishn
Church. And I know that, for example, my classmate, when she was in St. Kitts for all years, she actually went there. Because, I was talking about it, and she went, she visited. Different persons from Stacia would go there and visit on Sunday. Sometimes I'm not there. I've never been there with a Stacia person in the church itself. But they go and they send me pictures, they send me voice notes, they send me text messages. I'm in your church, check the live stream. So,
That's nice. So you as a man of faith, I can say, at one point you wanted to become a pastor, or is that dream still there or not?
It's not.
Why the change?
Okay. I like cultural activities.
You notice?
Now, a lot of cultural activities don't match with biblical teaching.
Okay.
Perfect example is our carnival.
Yeah.
That doesn't match biblical teaching. And I love culture, and I like to be a part of my culture. And to go down such a road, you gotta give up a lot of things.
You feel like you're restricting yourself.
And I don't want to give up those things.
Well,
Totally understand.
It brings me to the question of what do you want to do? What do you want to become?
Well, the ultimate goal has always been the governor. But in reality, you can't just pick up and become the governor like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be studying communication. In particular, communication with marketing and journalism.
Beautiful.
And I am doing that because that's something that I do, here within the community. And I actually like it. I love
I can see that too.
posters and marketing, advertising.
You have it down pat.
Convincing people I'm very good at.
Yeah.
And, that is something that I want to do. But I also had to look at what does Stacia need? What do we need in terms of jobs?
Yeah.
What will be there permanently, and what would you need short term? And that's why I came up with my decision to become a communication specialist. Because the government always needs somebody for communication.
Yeah.
Businesses always need somebody for communication and marketing. So I was like, this is good. And in Stacia, I noticed a lot of business start off very, very well with marketing, posting every day, publishing posters, and then it just starts to decrease, until they don't post at all, and social media just go blank.
Yeah.
But actually, I can say that you're already doing all of those things, because I can see why you choose that, because like you say, I think you also do bulletins as well. Everything that has to do with communication and engaging with the community, I think you have it by nature, I should say.
Exactly. So I want to also ask you, because usually when you leave the island, you have more choices, but a lot of people are picking between States or Holland.
Okay.
Are you looking at something different, or are those the two choices that you're looking at?
I'm within those choices.
Okay.
I went to the Netherlands last year with GVP, when they live on Potting School. The trip was really good, but I learned something. I cannot live in the Netherlands.
Why not?
The culture is completely different. The housing. I've been to student housing, and 20 people living in one house. I could hardly deal with 2 people living in one house. Much less 20 people. You got to share a bathroom. You have to share a kitchen. I can't do that. And then the pricing for these houses are ridiculous. When the housing itself is not up to, I would say, living code. So I looked at that and I was like, to go there now, and then to boot, the educational system I was in, my diploma doesn't allow me to go directly to HBO. So I would have to do MBO. And I was like, boy, to do MBO, and I still have to go HBO. You're there just a lot of years.
At least 8 or 6 to 8.
And I like, boy, I don't think I'll be motivated to continue for 6 to 8 years. That's why I didn't become a doctor. And then I looked at Bonilla. I was like, boy, Bonilla ain't for me either, because I'll have to do MBO. because they don't have you.
Yeah.
Boy, where to go? I looked around and I looked at the states and I saw that I can do associates in communication. And I was like, yeah, this sounds sound promising, you know. And then after that, I do my bachelor's, and you know. And I was even saying after that, I could go live in Holland and do my master's.
Yeah.
You know, because then I wouldn't fall under student housing so much no more.
Yeah.
I could find an apartment.
Yeah. And it's for a shorter time too.
For a shorter time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Sounds like you have it thought out. So when are you planning to go?
This coming school year, definitely. Else I'll be homeless. This coming school year, I definitely have my mindset.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen? How do you think the community of Stacia are going to feel when you leave? We all know the purpose of why you're leaving, but what do you think will happen? Or
you know they say you never know how full the well is until the well runs dry. I think that is what's gonna happen. Perfect, especially in the church.
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very involved in the church, and because of that, I think that's why I'm trying to step back now. You know, try to do less so that they could start to do, you know, what I've been doing in that aspect. And in the community, if you notice, I'm not really doing as much as I was doing. You know, constantly doing this, doing that. And I'm trying to step back slowly, because I really want that if I have to leave, because I do have to leave, they would be able to do X, Y, Z. You know, but I'll still be doing things from a distance. But not everything.
Yeah. It brought me to a question, maybe kind of a hard question. Education system. Because you say, for example, that if you go to the Netherlands, you practically got to go to MBO, and that would mean technically extra 4 years, just to put it blunt. When I was going to school, it wasn't like that. It was HAVO, go straight to HBO, you do your 4 years, and
That was for HAVO.
Yeah, for HAVO, but because it doesn't have a system like that, it's not really possible. How do you feel about, do you think that maybe they should have stuck with, because now you're going through a different system, do you think they should have stuck with the older system where it was the structure of how it is in Holland, or you think maybe switching to the English system was the best choice?
My personal opinion
as a student
would be that I think the educational system, I think the Dutch system in the aspect of going to Holland would have been good. But now you're seeing most students, they don't want to go to Holland, you know, and I think that is where the English system has been a major influence, you know, especially if I don't want to go to the Netherlands, why I have to do all these Dutch exams and go to this whole Dutch system, and then I still wouldn't be going, you know, to the Dutch system in the Netherlands or Bonnie or any other Dutch territory. So I think that the English system for me is good.
It works
for me. The only thing is that I truly hope, and I'm seeing it slowly, that the school is offering more in terms of the CVQs. So CVQ, when I was going to school, was only cooking, welding, construction, and childcare. You know, it was those four things. You didn't have much of an option. You had to fit yourself into one of those things. And now I see they started robotics, which is a very, very good initiative.
Exactly.
And I think that they're offering more, you know, slowly but surely they're giving more. I see they're offering classes that I didn't get to receive. They're giving opportunities. I see some youngsters going to Barbados this coming week. And
what's the one about? The one to Barbados?
So it's like the trip to Holland, but instead of the Netherlands, to Barbados.
Oh,
okay.
So I was like, this is a good initiative, you know? So I personally am proud of the system I was in, but I do believe that there is more that could be offered, and the school is working towards that.
I have a question since you're speaking about that. Why didn't you choose within the Caribbean region?
Within the Caribbean region, my godmother, she advised me to explore a different culture. the Caribbean, we all have similar culture, you know?
That's true.
And if you go into the outer world, you see things that you don't really get in the Caribbean. And it's important to broaden your view and broaden your aspect, especially when you want to do certain things. It's good to have a perspective that is not inside the box.
Yeah, because think of that because, for example, God, to me, going to somewhere that is not the same, although, my time in Holland was kind of dreadful. But when you look back, it was nice seeing something totally opposite than what you was actually into. Yeah. I wanted to ask you another question. I see that you talk about your nana, but actually want to ask you, outside of her, who inspires you?
Wow, that's a question. Okay. I have 13 godparents, right?
13.
13. And out of all my godparents, I have 3 that really stand out. Well, 4. And, you know, Mina Ellis was also my godfather. And, you know, he was really a big influence in my life, especially when it comes to, you have to get out of Stacia. If you stay here, don't talk to me again. You gotta go. You know? So, he was one of, you know, a person that had a big influence on my life. But also my godmothers, Alida, Reina, Candy, you know, they have an influence. And Teacher Debbie, of course. You know, I can't do anything without Teacher Debbie. I have to mention Teacher Debbie. And they have been a big influence for me. And each of them have a different influence. For example, Teacher Debbie's influence on me is more church related. Alida's influence on me is more educationally, you know. Candy's influence is more personal. Reina's influence on me is more mental. So like, you know, are you're going through something, you know that type of
nice
influence. So each of them are completely different in the sense of what influence they give to me.
So then you would say, like, are those your mentors?
I would say so, yes.
Because now there's a thing right now where they say it's important to seek a mentor, you know, for people who you really look up to. So, yeah. And they're your godparents as well. So, it was destined to be.
I actually wanted to take it back because there was a question I actually forget to ask, and it was kind of like, it was tying the thing with St. Kitts and also with your, the youth empowerment thing, because I see that you have some speakers. You have 3 speakers, and it's 2 or 3 from St. Kitts, if I'm mistaken. 1 from St. Kitts. Can you elaborate more on the speakers that you have for the program itself?
Yes, we have Elsa Peterson from Sabre. She's an Island Council member. Elsa has a powerful story that resonates with our young people. We all know that in Stacia we have teenage pregnancies. Now, oftentimes, a lot of young women, when they get pregnant at a young age, they become demotivated, you know, discouraged. They feel like, hey, I just got to be a mother, raise my child, find a job, and settle, you know? But Elsa didn't do that. Elsa raised her child, but also got her education, you know? And she studied, if I'm not mistaken, she has a degree in law. And it's very important for our young women to realize that, hey, it's not about being only a mother, it's about being myself. Because a lot of times, you know, women forget that, hey, they have to be their own person. You know, and that's something that I think Elsa could bring over to our young people, that they have the power to decide their own future, their own destiny. Taisha is from Anguilla. Taisha has a big impact on young people. Now, Taisha is known for her loud, very loud headpieces, which, you know, they speak to young people, and the way she dress. You know, young people these days, they like short clothes. They like to be half naked, quote unquote, Stacia people. And she doesn't do that. She takes pride in how you carry yourself, how you represent yourself, you know? And she deals a lot with young people on not only regional aspect, but she did something also with the United Nations. So, you know, it's something that you could, you know, get from. You can take something from. Mr. Robinson, I'm not too good at pronouncing his first name. Mr. Robinson is from St. Kitts, and he was awarded a Remarkable Teen Award last year in St. Kitts.
Okay.
Now, this is very important because I want young people to realize that the award here, compared to how it is in other countries, it has its similarities, but it's also so different. And I think that that's something he can bring over to his experience with the awards, you know. And he also does ambassador work. He travels and does things regionally.
Yeah. Because you mentioned the difference. What's the biggest difference between the awards in the different countries compared to Stacia?
Okay, other countries. Okay, in the States, the Remarkable Teens originated, and in the States, it's done like you just nominate people, you bring them in, you give them a award, which is a plaque. You take picture, and they go up in the police department. Because in the States, it belongs to the police department. You know, in St. Kitts, it's done in the form of like a parliament sitting. So parliament sits, they do presentations. So like an island council meeting, they do presentations, and then they give the trophy. In Stacia, I love to eat. So I said, a gala would be best. Have young people dress up, they go all out.
It is nice.
You know, they come out and they feel acknowledged.
Yeah.
They really feel, and it matches our culture as well, because anytime you hear formal in Stacia, it's a gala.
Of course.
You know,
that's
it's
true.
always a gala. Food.
Yeah.
So, and I noticed too, what's different is that here we give them medals and trophies. In other countries, like in the States, they get a plaque. In St. Kitts, they get a trophy. Here we give them a medal and a trophy, and we also encourage them to use MRT behind their name.
Okay.
And
what is armor? What do you mean?
MRT is most remarkable team.
Okay.
So we encourage them to use that when, for example, if they're on a podcast here tonight, they could use that. That's a way of identity that, hey, I was awarded. It also goes back to them truly feeling accepted. You know, I accepted my award, and I really want to get others to, you know, live up to this. Become an ambassador of the same program, you know. So that is something different that we do here. And we have the government involvement, like, you know, all other places. That's a similarity. Another similarity is that the biographies and the categories. Our categories here are completely the same categories that are used in Philadelphia.
Okay.
We have modernized, I think, 3 of them in the terms of the name of them was kind of like old-timey. So we changed the name. We also added 2 of our own categories. Station Excellence is one, and I think Stewardship is also another. Yes.
Yeah. So apart from that, if you had another question, but you do a lot of event planning, organizing, I should say. How is that? What made you get into that?
I like things to go E and not C. So organizing has not been like a job for me. I consider it fun. I've organized a lot of stuff, a little too much.
Tell me, what have you organized thus far?
Recently, I think we all know that there was the tragic accident that claimed the 2 lives of 2 young men. And my family was not handling that very well, seeing that my biological mother's sister, my aunt, she was, you know, she's still going through it. And at that time, it was even worse. And so it was like, boy, we have to plan a funeral. And I was like, plan a funeral? Ooh. that's a lot of work, you know? And I couldn't leave them there in like that because, you know, they're not thinking straight, you know, it's a shock.
It's true.
It's a horrible shock. And then and there, I was like, I will assist with this, I will assist with that. But then I realized, hey, I ain't assisting no more. I'm the one planning this thing, you know? So it was a lot of coordination, you know, speaking with what they want, because you're not representing you're representing your family. So whatever they want, you had to make sure that was executed. You know, I've also organized a few years ago. I had a pure black. Pure black. That was an event I organized as well. There are others. Like the church has a parade, an Aldersgate parade. I also organize that through the church, of course. You know? So there are events in between, but I can't remember all of them right now.
I know because you assist a lot. So it's like sometimes you say you assisting, but actually when you look around, you notice like, hey, actually planning this. So I could imagine that. Also with the church too, I know you're really involved in that. Regarding back to the funeral, I really admire the planning. It really stood out to me. It's like, okay, I think I was outside of church. And I said, oh, we have access to the bulletin on the phone. I think you released it before. I think I said this was the most organized funeral I ever attended.
So this funeral, it was a reflection of a young life that was cut short. I was like, boy, this funeral have to be on point. Because you have young people who are going to be coming to this funeral. And I know young people because I'm young. We don't like things to be all over the place. We want something to be organized, we come to and we enjoy. You know? And I was like, boy, I did a booklet cover that was published first. I was like, oh, this is not me. You know? This booklet was rough. And then I sat down the night and I was like, boy, let me experiment here, experiment there. And then I got the booklet too and I was like, this is it. And I also looked at, boy, we got a lot of people who can't come. The church going to be ram jam. They ain't going to have enough bulletins for everybody.
Exactly.
What is the best solution? And I did a digital booklet already.
Okay.
And I was like, boy, to go do a digital booklet, that means I'm going to sit down on program the whole thing, do it in a different format. I was like, boy, this is time, this is patience. But I was like, it was worth it. Because my sister for sure lives in Netherlands. She couldn't receive a booklet. You know, they had other family members who were in Curacao and St. Martin who couldn't receive a booklet.
That is true.
And then we had people here who was, because when I looked around, I did nearly 400 booklets. And when I looked around, I saw an empty box. So I was like, boy, good thing I did this digital booklet.
It's true.
And the digital booklet, I was made to understand the digital booklet. You could have printed out as well. There was a little print button. So you could have print out the booklet
for yourself.
And it came out.
So
I was like, oh, okay. You know?
Also have it as a keepsake too. I find that was really good. It's really stood out to me. I'm like, wow, you really elevated the level of funeral, I should say.
I tried my best to do that, especially with all the digital work and the way the public was fed the information. What I tried to do was I didn't make a lot of posts because I really don't like when you have a funeral, you have the week in one post. Funeral and the next post. You have done this in the next post. You have dressed like this in the next post. I don't like that. Because then you got to be looking for information. So I waited till we had everything. And then made one long post. That this is what is happening. This is so forth, so forth. You know, pinpointing one contact person to do the week. Because oftentimes you have people who doing the week and then you got contact. No, if you call the sister, no, don't call me. Call the brother. You call the brother, no, don't call me. Call the child. You know? So I was like, let me try to avoid that as much as possible.
All of that you've done doing communication there.
So I was like, let's avoid that. Let's avoid the miscommunication in between because, you know, people would misunderstand too. So I was like, you know, let me change that narrative. Try to do something different. And it was my first time doing a Catholic funeral. And that in itself was a very different experience, because the Catholic Church funerals are not at all like how I'm accustomed to it at the Methodist Church. But it was an experience that I am grateful for.
Yeah.
And I think that what stands out the most from that is the way in which my family was never a family that was closely knit.
Yeah.
And this funeral brought them all together. And it still has them together. And that's something that really stood with me, that hey, even though a life was lost, love and unity was gained, within that short period.
Yeah. Nice.
One thing I always like to ask persons on a podcast is, what does mental health mean to you?
Mental health, okay. Mental health is not something that you can smoke away. Like some people would think you do some little sage here, you do some incense, you get rid of mental health, you don't feel depressed no more. People feel like it's something you could catch. But I don't feel that way at all. I feel like mental health has to do with one's personal experience in life. Everybody goes through something. And what is very sad within having a mental problem, no, we don't say problem, being in a mental situation, you realize that you don't have much people who you truly trust. And I know that when I watch persons who have depression, for example, a lot of things that trigger their depression is that I don't have anybody, I see persons with anxiety, their biggest thing is, how are you going to do all of this? How are you going to get through, And I see mental health as something that a person can go through, but it's not how they experience it. It's what they become while they are in it, It's not how because you can go through something and get nothing from it, You could, but if you go through mental health, you should become a stronger person, a better person. And it's never going to go away. You will learn how to manage it. But it will never go away, because it's not like you have a cure for depression. You have a cure for anxiety. There will be times, there will be days when you feel depressed, you feel anxious, but it's how you manage it, how you handle the situation.
I couldn't think of even a better
Wonderful.
I can't think of a better answer than that for sure.
Aishan, wonderful answer. I have a question for you. Is age just a number?
Age is definitely just a number. I have done things that go way beyond my age. When I was 14, turning 15, I kept all black. That was way beyond my age.
You were 14.
Wow. Yeah,
Okay.
And I brought artists from away. That was way beyond my age, But I did it with the help of older persons, of course, And there are other things that I've done that go way beyond my age. And I really think age is just a number, but it's also something that you need to look at very closely. Because there's a reason why certain things are set for certain ages. Perfect example is driving. There's a reason why a 4-year-old is not allowed behind the wheel. So their age is just a number, but also it's important to look at why the number exists in the context in certain cases,
So talking about the 4-year-old behind the wheel, do you think by the age of 8 you could have been able to drive?
Boy,
For the type of mindset you have?
if I had really want to, I think so.
Okay. How is the age is just a number? I agree with that statement. How is you're young. You maybe surpass the expectation of many people, which I don't doubt, How was that, trying to go through that and, like you say, being recognized as who you are? How was that in comparison to the older folks? How was that? How did you feel around them?
Exceeding expectations. Wow. I think that I've exceeded to 20% of expectations, and not 100%. Now, I say 20% because there are a lot of things that people hold in their heart, high hopes for me to do. I don't think I'll reach half of them, but I do believe that it's important for me as a person to acknowledge that I've actually passed this, this thing already. And when I go around older persons, I actually do feel like, boy, I feel, shy at the seed.
When you're around older people?
What? you know how hard it was for me to go and talk by that candle like they had on the mention road? Yeah. People were calling me, why you don't go post something, start this thing? And I in my mind say, no. I just be nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous right now. But I've learned how to manage being nervous, so that other persons don't see that. People see a person who bold and fearless.
Yeah.
While inside I say to myself, boy, if I move from here right now, I ain't coming back. Yeah. But when I stand around older persons, I do feel nervous. I feel shy. Yeah. But I manage through it.
People might say, I shouldn't have to stay in his realm. Like I should say, like, okay, your age. What's your idea on that? Those comments like that. Like a child should be a child, for example.
In certain aspects, I do share that sentiment. Certain aspects. But in many cases, I don't think so. Like, for example, I'm very vocal when it comes to, if I see something and I don't like it on this island, I will voice my opinion.
Yeah.
And a lot of persons don't like that. But I think it's important for persons to the reason I do it is because I want other young people to know that you could also open your mouth and say something if you don't like it. Because we come from a mentality where, hey, young people ain't supposed to open their mouth, they ain't supposed to have to say. We have to say because we're the adults. And that don't work so.
Yeah.
The future is young people.
Yeah.
And you cannot build a resilient Stacia, quote unquote, if you don't start with our young people.
Yes.
So I think that for me, I am vocal. My opinion on their point of view is that sometimes we have to look beyond the person and their age and look at the message in which is being formed.
Yes. That is part of why I asked you, is age is just a number? Yeah. Because I can, you exceed many people's expectation, and I think it's people accepting change. Change needs to happen. And how do they internalize that within themselves? I believe it's up to them, as long as you're being respectful, of course. Yeah.
I have one final question. We're talking about the adults and we're talking about the younger generation. And I feel like there's a big disconnect between the two. What do you think can be done to bridge that gap between the younger generation and the older folks?
I've spoken a lot about what young people could do, what they can do, what they feel empowered to do. But I think what I'm missing here is that age group between 30 and 50. In every aspect of our island, you notice that is missing. When you leave Stacia and you travel to study and you come back, you are a different person. Because, when you go to a different culture, you adapt to that culture. So when they come back now, within that age group is like trying to fit back in. And then when you hit 50, you're like, boy, I'm really Stacia, I got to really participate. But then your whole life, basically, of service has gone down already. You have, 15 years before pension, and you got to make those 15 years count.
Yeah.
And I think what's missing is that our people between 30 and 50, they don't really see the importance of doing anything. And that is what needs to come back, because there's a huge gap between 30 and 50.
Yeah.
And our older folks don't agree with nothing the younger folks do. Well, I wouldn't say nothing. 75% of what they do.
Oh, that's a high percent.
Yeah.
And our younger folks don't agree with 85% of what our older folks.
Yeah.
And then you're missing the in between, the middle age. You don't have that. And in order to connect the older ones to the younger ones, the middle age needs to really be there. You know, they need to, perfect example, they need to start parenting. Parenting is something within our community that has gone down the drain. And if we're talking about building young people for service, it starts with the parents. If we're talking about getting young people when they reach that bigger age to be mature and they're mentally, you know, and financially stable, it starts with our adults within that age group of 30 and 50.
That is true.
And you know, and too often the older folks only look at the younger ones. They try to mentor the younger ones.
But we are figuring it out.
Yeah, you know, so in reality, I see the chain as older folks mentor middle age, the middle age mentor the young people. That's how I see the chain. And I think that's the reason why older folks weren't created to have young children. They weren't built or created to have a 1-year-old when they're 80. And the reason for that was because they have had to guide other persons until they reach that age. So the guiding should be the older ones need to mentor the middle age need to mentor the younger persons. It's a cycle. And we don't have the cycle. We're missing that gap. You look at the church, you don't have the age between 30 and 50.
Why do you think? Why is that?
Why is that? Jackie is a perfect example.
Why?
He was raised in the church, you know? From what I made to understand too. Like, he was raised up in the church. You had to go. And when you got your own freedom, you were like, boy, we ain't doing that no more. Now this goes back to personal connection. Now when you force a child to do something that they didn't want to do, they will never find a love or interest in doing that thing. But when you encourage a child to go and do something, there's a huge difference. And I think that is where it should start. Because a lot of those parents with children those ages, they were forced. You had no choice. I mean, I didn't have a choice, but I still saw, you know, not everybody thinks that way. A lot of persons feel like, boy, they're forcing me into this God thing. My mother's a perfect example. She grew up in the Adventist church. She had to go. And now she doesn't go. You know, so it's like you were forced into it to the point where somebody said to me, I had so much God in my life already. I don't think I want him so much right now. You know?
Wow.
So it's like that. You know, you reach to a point where it's like, I'm churched out. You know? I ain't saying I wake up and not pray, but I churched out. You know? And the church doesn't make you a Christian. The church doesn't send you to heaven.
I was going to ask that.
And it doesn't make you a better person. You have to make yourself a better person. And you have to get yourself to heaven. So going to church every Sunday, it builds faith. It doesn't build spirituality. Spirituality is personal.
It's within you.
Build that yourself. I can't build it for you, Paula. Can't build it for Jackie. Same way Paula can't build it for me, Jackie can't build it for me. I have to build
for yourself.
My spirituality for myself. You know, and spirituality, I see a lot of persons don't like atheists. Within our community, that's something that also is I'm noticing it. If a person said they don't believe in God, one time that person, people like, she going hell, me don't talk to she don't, you know? But in reality, everyone has their own choice of what they believe and who they believe. And who is me to tell Paula she can't believe that the water is a God? I'd be out of my place. I have to respect Paula's decision. And even at a given point, I should encourage Paula's decision. Because a lot of times, persons who are atheists, they start to believe that there is a God. It starts with a water. They believe the water is God. Then they start to believe, boy, water can't help me. There's a higher being. And then it grows and grows, and then eventually some of them become Christians.
And sometimes life teaches you as well.
So you know, you have to just, I'm not saying shun people, but embrace people.
I like that about you that you say that, because oftentimes, sometimes, maybe that's why some people don't go to church, because they feel judged or too much of high expectations for the person. Okay, I see you once. Okay, I expect you to see you every Sunday in church or every Saturday in church. So I think that, like what you say, is a personal journey. And, yeah. What does it do for you?
You don't have to be in church every Sunday. Like, when persons come once, they just be like, "Why, you should come next week. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week." And then next week you don't come. If you come the following Sunday, where was last week? I miss you last week. Or if you meet somebody on the road, one thing people hate, and I hate to get it, when you come in church. You know? That's something that kind of makes you feel like, boy, these people really judging me. Like, I don't have a connect. Like, I need to go to the church to find God. You know? And that's something that in our community is very, very, very vibrant.
Yeah.
And I would encourage persons to not do that. Like, if you see a person, you encourage them to come to church once. You don't have to constantly be on the back, like.
And then you might go into the negative.
Yeah, and you can make time to go carnival. You can make time.
They don't sit in a sermon.
You can make time for God. You know, and that's not our place. It's not for us to decide what people can make
and
time
not
for.
to judge.
You know, because you could make time for that, and that's your business.
Their own way.
You know, you have a reason why you made time for that. I know a lady said to me once that she makes time to go out to party because when she was at her lowest, it's the people in the club who came for her and took her out to have a good time.
Yeah.
The people in the church never looked for her.
Like you say, it's a moment of being recognized and heard. So maybe that's where her point of, getting people to, I say mental health.
Exactly.
Yeah. Everyone seeks it in a different way. Part of all of what you do and what you're doing, I remember you being a chef. Where did that come from?
Goes back to my Nana again. Nana is known for her cakes.
Yeah.
Everybody buys
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Nana's cakes.
Yep.
I haven't seen a day she hasn't baked a cake, and her locry. Everybody orders this pot of locry. Or if there's something to be cooked, they come by her and ask her to cook it. So that goes back there. That's where I actually found my passion. She didn't teach me how to make cake, though. She never taught me. All the time I was asking her, she wouldn't teach me.
But do you think by seeing her, you can make cake now?
Can't make white cake. I've tried. Can't make white cake.
Yeah.
I think I made it once and it come out good.
Okay.
That's because she literally stand up there. She's not a good teacher either. Because she stood up there and she was
go
like,
watch this and
you can't do that. You can't do that. Because me, when I'm making something, and this is a little secret I have, when I'm making something, I just bake on broil. I just cook on the hottest fire. I just mix everything together.
Yeah.
And when you're making cake, she like, you can't do that. You can't mix everything together. You know? And that's how I see it. I find everything could go
Everything we together.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, So, but me baking, I love baking. I have a passion for it.
Yeah.
I can bake almost everything but white cake. I do cakes, I do pastries, I do breakfast sales. I did lunch in the past. Don't really do lunch no more because everywhere selling lunch now.
Yeah, that's true.
And not much places offer good breakfast.
Yeah,
That's
true.
something
That's
that I
a focus
noticed.
too.
You don't really have good breakfast that you could, sit down and be like, boy, this was a good breakfast.
Yeah.
And that's why I started breakfast. Making cakes is a passion. You have to have a passion for baking to make cakes.
Patience.
I made cakes and they never bake. They stay water in the oven. I made cakes that they overflow over the pan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I fill the pan too much. But that was a part of the learning,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made good cakes. I made bad cakes. I had compliments. I had complaints.
Yeah.
But one thing I've learned while making cakes is that if you're really going to make a cake, you got to really put your mind to it. Because you got to be prepared to be there for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
You got to bake that cake. You got to make the cake. Right? If you don't have the ingredients, you got to go shop for shop. Because one shop don't have all the ingredients.
Yeah.
You got to go shop hopping. Right? You got to get the ingredients. You got to put them together. You got to butter the pan, prep the thing, lock on the oven, preheat your oven, get it ready, push it in the oven. You gotta stand an hour, sometimes 2 hours depending on the fire you have it on. You have to stand up and mind this cake like a child. When you're done, then you have to cool it. You still have to decorate it. And Stacia, people like service, so you got to carry it to the house too.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
So you're going through all of that. And I like to break on broil.
Yeah.
And I never burnt a cake. But I bake on broil and I make sure that it's cooked to perfection.
Yeah.
When I see that it's cooking a little too fast, you know, I'll turn down the oven. But I like broil because it goes fast.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
You know, you're done within a half an hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I see Nana standing up. She check the cake. She gone back.
Oh, you have yours.
She gone across the road. She come back, the cake still ain't done. And I like, no man.
You got a patient.
You know?
Yeah.
So my love for cooking definitely comes from her. I did cooking in school as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I ended up at Boardwalk actually.
Yeah.
And Boardwalk has been a very, very large influence on me, especially with cooking.
Yeah.
Because Boardwalk reminded me of having a passion for cooking. Because at a given point, I was just doing it because, hey, I want the money bad.
Yeah.
And then my prices start to go up.
Because things starting to go up.
Yeah, you know. And then in my mind, I like, boy, I have to have a passion for this. I watch Natalie cook. I never see Natalie just fling down a steak on the thing because I have to get this done. Natalie does it with passion. And that's one thing I admire about her. Natalie is very passionate. You know, she's a good boss. She really puts her all into it. And that's something that I take too from mentorship, you know. Natalie has been a mentor when it comes to cooking for me.
Nice.
You know, she reminds me that you have to love the cooking because people taste your love in that food.
Yeah.
If you put hate in the food ain't taste horrible.
Yeah.
You have to put love in that food. You have to cook with love, you know?
Ishn, it was a very enjoyable episode, but before I finish, every episode I always ask the person sitting with us if they have anything they would want to tell the public before we close this off.
I would like to say, my message to all the people who would be watching this is, I know Stacia has a way of limiting and labeling you. I was labeled the rude boy for Jennifer. Your label doesn't define who you will be or who you will become. Now, you might be the label today for 9 days talk, but definitely on the 20th day, you can become something. It's what you put into a situation is what you get out. You have to take something and be something. You take something from that situation and you become something because of that situation. You never let your situation determine who you will be, how you will get out, and you never let something, an obstacle, stop you from achieving what you truly want to achieve. You go for it. If you want to get your job, go for that job. You want to get an education, you go for it. But whatever you do it to the best of your ability.
Wow. Powerful.
You couldn't end it any better than
I
that,
love
for
it.
sure. Ishn, I would like to thank you. It was a very, very enjoyable episode. We thank you for wanting to come to do this again. Before, like I said, it was more about the political realm, but I'm glad we got to know Ishn Courtar.
On a different aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you again. And like I say here on the talk, tackle imagery, capture the moment, watch it forever. See you guys in the next episode. Bless.